Over the years, our beautiful city, Washington, D.C., has developed into a large, multicultural society. There are so many career opportunities that draws people to this beautiful DMV area. Tourists travel from far and near to see the National Monument, the Lincoln Memorial, and many historical museums. And you can find any type of food you desire in these diverse localities. But underneath all the beautiful and charmed attractions, there's people like you and I that struggle from day to day with normal issues. There's also people in the DMV area that suffer from anxiety, PTSD, depression, and other mental health issues. Some issues are caused by traumatic incidents, and some issues are caused from daily situations that we find ourselves stumbling into just by living our normal lives. We are often taught as children to watch what you say or don't talk too much. But right now and today, we are stopping the silence. DMV Madam D is here to tell you you are not alone. And this is your platform to help stop the silence. We will discuss daily issues in which we all struggle with as regular people who simply just want to live in content and comfortable in our normal lives. Do not feel the need to keep your mouth covered about your emotions and feelings. It's okay to not be okay. So uncover your mouth, DMV, and welcome Madam D in Stopping the Silence.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Stopping the Silence. And today's topic is Rising Above Chaos Part 2. Part 2. So if you missed Part 1, go back and watch it before you watch this one, okay? Because it's important information that you want to see. Miss Ashley Marie, thank you again for coming on Part 2. Thank you. Oh, most definitely. Your first episode was amazing. You just poured into Stopping the Silence. And I want to thank you for being vulnerable to us and the world about what God has done for you. So thank you.
Thank you for having a platform where people can speak up and just share this stuff so we can do exactly what you're intending to, because the silence doesn't serve any purpose.
Yes. So thank you. So part 2, I'm looking forward to part 2. So part 2, tell us about the steps of how you started to rise above this chaos that you were dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. So pretty much, here I am in my mid-20s. I'm married with a college degree. I've got a toddler, she's only about 2 years old. And all I ever really wanted was my own family, a stable family, a good job, and a better future for my daughter in childhood, than I was used to. I didn't want the chaos for me anymore. I didn't want it for her. And it was like, no matter what I could do, I just didn't seem to escape it. So finally, after the attack had happened and, I had been on some medications for a couple years and I'm in and out of mental health units. And I'm going to therapy twice a week, psychiatry once a week, which if you're in treatment like that, that's pretty heavy duty, So
yes,
this is for a couple of years I'm doing this and there's just no progress, none whatsoever. And then finally, by the grace of God, my doctor's office had actually switched me to a new provider. And she was just a nurse practitioner. She's pretty new. I feel like, this may have been her first job because she's on the younger side, but she was just literally a blessing in disguise because she took one look at me and basically said, like, don't take offense to this, but you are not healthy. From the inside out, you are not healthy and you are on these medications and you are in therapy to be healthy, to live a fulfilled life and be able to take care of your kid, and you're literally just skating by. And at that point I was not able to work, so my degree that I was still paying for, unfortunately, had gone out the window. I was about to be declared permanently and totally disabled by Social Security, which again, if you know about that, it's not easy to accomplish. But that was straight for post-traumatic stress disorder. That wasn't for anything else. And so at that point, even Social Security was ready to just wash their hands of me and let me become this person who's on all these meds I shouldn't be on and just let my life go to waste. And if that happened to me, all I kept thinking about is, what does that mean for my daughter?
Right.
Unfortunately, her father wasn't, at a place he should have been financially and maturity wise. So, she was born into these two parents who had a lot of growing and learning to do. And all I could ever think about is how I need better for her and I want better. So finally, in about 2014, I really, really started to take the things that I was learning in therapy seriously. And instead of just learning them in therapy, I started to actually apply them in real life situations. And mind you, I've been in therapy for almost 30 years and never really had done that before. And I
Right.
started to see that it was helping. And I got introduced to dialectical behavior therapy, DBT for short. And I had done cognitive behavior therapy, but I had never applied it. And so I was thinking CBT doesn't work. Well, that's not true. I just hadn't applied it. And something in DBT really incorporated the two. And I was finally able to start applying those tactics to everyday life. And I really learned to use them in situations that are just a little bit stressful so that when things blow up, I know to revert back to those healthy coping mechanisms and skills. And so that started to help. And then finally, this doctor took me off a bunch of medications, and she was absolutely right. They were causing bloating of my organs, my liver, my kidney. The water weight that I was retaining wasn't healthy. So not only was I not physically active enough, but I really couldn't be. I didn't feel well enough, and it's because of medications that were supposed to be helping me. So it was just this whole spiel. It was no good. And so finally I got off 13 medications, which is not easy. I ended up having to go to detox because one of them was a narcotic. It's a benzo. And that's life-threatening to come off on your own. So I was in
withdrawals.
14 days. I didn't eat for 21 days. It was hard. And, I've had people say to me before, like, oh, you don't know what it's like. You haven't hit rock bottom. You didn't struggle with addiction like your parents or anything like that. And that is something different. And I am grateful I haven't experienced it, but still having to go to detox for something that I was put on by people I trusted was not easy, So by 2015, I was off all of the medications. I was working part-time so that I didn't lose my disability, but that I was making enough money to survive, because unfortunately disability is not enough money for people to survive off of, especially with children. So my marriage was kind of taking a toll through all of this. A combination of my ex-husband going through his own stuff. He was also struggling with some addiction and things like that. And really, he just came from a town where that's the norm. On the weekends you party and you do this. And so he worked and he partied. That wasn't working for me because I was mentally unstable and we had a young child. So we were fighting a lot. It was getting very toxic. We went from best friends to almost complete enemies. And so finally, I took it among myself to just tell him, we can't do this anymore because it's not fair to our daughter. She's watching me fall apart every day, and then she's watching us fight every day. So we did try to separate it and then come back together, and things just were not any better. He was refusing to go to therapy, and it felt like I was always the one doing the work on my own. And so finally, I just kind of threw up my hands. I saved up enough money and I got us an apartment. It was subsidized housing, nothing fancy, nothing special. But to me, it really felt like a lot, because it's like, just a year or two ago, here I am on all these meds and can hardly take care of myself. And I cannot take care of my daughter without assistance. And now I'm working part-time. I'm off all these meds. I'm losing weight. I'm feeling got an apartment. I felt again like I had that purpose that I felt right out of college. It's not something I felt a lot in my life, And it's a feeling
like
I now
control
to my young childhood. And although it was a chaotic one, as I've said, I knew no different. So to me, I was able to be myself and just be who I want to be with no judgment or whatever. And so when I feel that way, again, as an adult, I feel like I have a purpose and I'm able to just be me. Well, having that purpose, it's the most freeing feeling in the world. So it felt great. It felt good. I move into this apartment. Everything's going great. And then I literally, right when I moved in, my biological mom had agreed to take me shopping for some stuff to celebrate. And she was at that point, she had been doing good. She was sober for a few months. And for her, that was good. A few months, I always took it with a grain of salt, but it was still good. And progress. We're excited to go shopping with her. And then she got very sick. And then she was in a hospital for a week. She's in ICU. I went to go see her, and I had a feeling in my gut that she had relapsed, and something in my heart said to ask the nurses for her purse. I looked in there and it was full of nips and pills. And that to me was the answer. So pretty much her respiratory issues were separate, but her addictions played into them and made her very, very sick. She came home from the hospital, which I did not think was the best idea. And I was advocating and begging the hospital to keep her there, get her the treatment she needs. But again, here I am still trying to save my mother's life. So it feels like nothing's ever changed, right? Because I've been doing this since I was 5 years old. She gets sent home. She's starting to do better. She tells me, okay, we're going to go shopping tomorrow. I'm feeling great. So, okay. I wake up the next morning. Mom's not answering her phone. Well, nothing new. My mother was always late, never showed up where she was supposed to be. So I just thought nothing of it. And then I got a phone call from her boyfriend who said that my uncle who lived with her, he was very ill mentally and physically. He was terminally ill at the time, was saying that my mother was dead and not getting out of bed and that I needed to get over there to go make sure this wasn't true. And I didn't believe it. Okay. I had saved my mom's life how many times? My mom was fine.
Right.
So I drove over there. I had left my daughter with a neighbor because, again, we lived in subsidized housing, so close neighborhood. I left her with a neighbor I trusted, drove over there. I was stomping up those stairs, ready to yell at my mom because that's the relationship we had, very, very toxic. And I walked in, and she was gone. And it was like, again, the platform, the stability, everything I had worked so hard for was just ripped out from under me again. And it's like, come on. But I am now able to really look back at that and say, and some people think it's morbid and that I really shouldn't say it, but it was very freeing. Not having to save her life anymore, not having to worry where she is anymore, not wondering if she's hurting anymore. I know she's safe. I know she's in God's hands. I know she's watching for me. And in that moment, I never thought of it as freeing, but now I'm able to look at it, and I feel her with me every day. And I think I am where I am today. And the only reason I'm writing this book is if she were still here, not only would I still be held back by trying to help her through her own stuff, but I wouldn't be living my own life and speaking up and doing the things that I'm doing now. So very, very hard to lose her. And it was very hard on my daughter because my daughter was 5 and they were very close. And I was just learning how to deal with my own mental health issues. I didn't feel strong enough to help my daughter, grieve. And I'll be completely honest, I didn't help her grieve. I just kind of buried myself into going back to work. And then before I knew it, I was in a new relationship. And that is really where things went wrong again for a little bit. Because instead of being concerned with healing from losing my mother and helping my daughter grieve, and continuing on that path of personal growth that I was on when my mom passed away, I was hurting. I didn't want to hurt. And again, I'm not somebody who turns to substances, so I turned to needing somebody to be there with me. And having that whole new girl mentality, I've always struggled with female friendships. It's not to say I've never had them, but I've never felt very comfortable with them. I've had one friend throughout my entire life that was somebody who I could just completely fall apart in front of. So I've always been somebody who focused more on my own family and men and relationships. And that is where I tend to be compulsive and I tend to be very codependent. And I never knew that for what it was. And so, within a month of my mom passing away, I'm dating this man and letting him move in. And I mean, again, just like my daughter's father, we meet, we're engaged, we're this, no time to get to know each other and see if it's a healthy relationship or any of that. So, I have a lot of guilt and stuff I have to work through on that side of things because I feel like I should have done better for myself, done better for my daughter, but I made that decision. And I was dating this man within a month of my mom passing away, and within a month of him moving in, he was physically abusing me. And I let it happen. I let it happen for 4 years. I just, 6 months after we started dating, I was pregnant with his son. There's plenty of people I could have gone to for help. This was my apartment. It was in my name. I had the money. I had the financial control. So it was not that, I've been in that relationship. When I was trying to leave my daughter's father, it was a little harder because it's like, I've got to save up the money. I've got to find a place. That can be really hard to get out of. I
Yeah.
wasn't in this situation. I welcomed this man in my home and I never made him leave. I never called the cops. Even when neighbors were calling the cops, I was lying through my teeth. And it was
Mm.
truly because I was so scared of being alone and sitting with my feelings, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I was brave enough to move into the place alone with my daughter, but after losing my mom, it was
Yeah.
just that emptiness, that void was there again. And I didn't want to start cutting myself again. I didn't want to,
Mm-hmm.
turn to drugs or alcohol. So I just got into this relationship and stayed in this relationship. And it was
Mm-hmm.
hard. I will say my relationship with my daughter's father got toxic and volatile, but when I was telling people that, I never fathomed what my son's father was going to put me through.
Mm.
The abuse was just on a different level. And when I say it's taken me a long time to forgive him and say that he was not an evil man and say that he was just a very hurt person who couldn't admit how hurt he was. So he was hurting everybody around him. But when I was going through it, it was like I was with someone who was possessed.
Mm.
It was that type of abuse where it's not a toxic relationship where people are fighting and being abusive. You know what I mean? Not saying that that's okay either, but those things happen. People come from backgrounds. People don't get the help they need. It was more of, I would literally be walking through the kitchen and I'm getting smacked upside the head. It's hard for me to do videos like this or even put myself out there because I'm still missing the 2 teeth that were knocked out from a time that he abused me. This man almost killed me. It wasn't just a toxic relationship. And he did it while I was pregnant. He did it the night I gave birth to my son while we were in the hospital. He wrapped cords around my throat. And these are things I have not talked about. I'm just now starting to come out about these things.
Yeah.
He passed away. He passed away in front of me. And I was still very, very brainwashed and very, very in love with him and thought I needed him. We had been together for 4 years. I thought I was going to be with him forever. I was going to live this life forever. I was a supervisor at a detox. Nobody knew I was coming home to this nightmare of a life,
Right.
I don't know how. It's that masking that I learned when I was younger. It carried over and I was able to go to work full time, 40, 50 hours a week, help save other people's lives, help them get off drugs or alcohol. And, it felt like my life is coming full circle because I'm helping people like the family that I come from. And then I come home and my 2 kids have to hide upstairs and I have to make sure I don't ruffle any feathers or all hell's gonna loose, pardon my French. But that's really how it felt. And I lived like that for 4 years. And then one day we're home having lunch together. It was a day where things were fairly calm by our standards. My daughter was in school. I had put my son in daycare, and although his father was not working, I had chosen to put him in daycare on the days that I worked because I didn't trust him to be home. That's pretty common sense at this point. I never saw him abuse our child, but I just didn't know. So I figured, whatever, I'll pay for daycare to keep my kids safe and just keep up this facade because this is what society expects of us, right? We need to be in a relationship. We need to have a job. We need to be the best moms. We can't admit what's going on or what's wrong. That's how I thought back then. So in 2019, we're having lunch together. I had the day off. My son was in daycare. My daughter was in school, and we had just ordered the food, and he's looking out the window, and I could feel the tension. If you've been in a relationship like that, a lot of times you feel it before it happens. And he's starting to get really upset because the food wasn't coming fast enough. And I really thought, oh, here we go. And the kids weren't around, the abuse was worse. So I'm starting to feel like I need to go into flight mode. I never fought. There was no fight mode with him. It was always flight or fawning, calm him, please him, make him happy, and you'll survive. Play dead if you have to, you'll survive. I mean, there was one time he abused me so bad in our bathroom. I came out and he looked at me and said, "Oh, wow, how'd you get up?" I mean, yeah. And so I felt that tension. I thought this is how things were going to play out that day. He gets up to look out the window, and then all of a sudden he leans back and he's grasping his chest. And I look at him, and his eyes roll in the back of his head, and he falls down. And I was so controlled by this man. As he's dying, I'm asking him if I should call 911. Should I call 911?
Mm.
If 911 comes, are you going to be mad at me? Is it okay that I call?
Mm.
I don't know how long I did that, but I still to this day feel like it was too long, because then when I realized what was actually happening, I said, screw it, I'm calling 911. I got them on the phone. I know how to do CPR. I'm trained in CPR. I couldn't perform CPR. I had to have them walk me through it. And I was screaming. I was crying to the point that when the ambulance got here, they had to restrain me in this very room while he was out in the other room, and they're trying to save his life. And this is a man who's spent most of his time trying to kill me. And when he passed, I was the grieving widow. I was the, how am I going to survive without my baby? I love him. My kids need him. We need him. He planned our foods. Whatever was on TV, he picked what I wore. He picked, I mean, everything was controlled by this man. And I literally felt like I was all of a sudden a child with 2 children.
Yeah.
And here I have to start all over again.
All over
and
again.
I had a very important job. And how am I supposed to work and do all these things when I am falling apart? So I couldn't. I never let myself fall apart after I lost him. Never. I was just the strong, like, okay, let's plan the funeral. These things have to be done. I let all his other children come and visit and stay. I let his sister come and stay till the funeral. I was taking care of everybody, because that's what Ashley does. Ashley doesn't take care of her, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just another time I was doing that. And I didn't realize how bad that was for me, that I just dove right into taking care of people, went right back to work. And even as I was planning the funeral and starting to admit to myself that maybe this is a good thing. And that sounds awful, but even my downstairs neighbors who used to hear the abuse on a regular basis, the first word that came out of their mouth when they found out he was passed was, I'm sorry to say this, but this might be a blessing for you and your children, because I don't think you would have survived. I was going to die. That man was going to kill me. So, you know, it's hard to look at it that way. Again, it's kind of morbid. It's very hard to say, like, I am free and able to rise above because my mother died. I am free and able to rise above because my son's father died. But I am also the first to admit, if they were still alive, I wouldn't be rising above. He would still be here running my life. You know, I don't think I would have. I needed those things to happen and everything to play out as it has for me to really say, wow. And this is why I shouldn't have been silent. And this is why I should have done things differently. And this is how it could have helped me, could have helped my kids. And so that happening really put me on a mission to start speaking out. Yeah. But the problem was, after his funeral, people were very, very upset at me for speaking out. It was, oh, well, when he passed, you were so sad. So now how can you say he did these things? He didn't do these things. You're a liar. And then I started having family members of him accuse me and say that I must have done something and I must have poisoned him. I mean, it was hard to deal with. I'm seeing my name being tagged on Facebook, people saying I'm a murderer, that they're going to hire a private investigator. And it's like, me, you know, I can't even hurt a fly. And I loved that man. I doted on him and I tried to be perfect for him because I thought that was what was going to make him love me and stop hurting me. And so to find that people were thinking that and all of that, it was hard. So I really was about to just shut up and not go forth with it. But then again, by the grace of God, I reconnected with a college professor who was one of my English professors. And they're like, you still haven't written down your life story. Like, you've gone through more than when you were in college and you still haven't put this on paper. And they really were a big cheerleader for me to start writing basically just a memoir about my life, you know. And I started that while I was still working at the detox. But then when I got laid off, that's when it hit me how much my relationship with my son's father really hurt and damaged me, how much he had done to me. And then here I am, unemployed, being a stay-at-home mom with all this lifelong worth of stuff just staring me in the face. And it's like, I needed hope. I needed God. I needed faith. I needed something. Otherwise, what was I to turn to?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So that's when I really put all of it into, like, okay, well, now I'm unemployed. I'm home with the kids all the time. My adoptive parents actually bought me a laptop because I was writing my book on my phone. And they were super supportive. You know, I don't have a relationship with them that I wish I had, that I think most biological kids are able to have with biological parents. but they are still super supportive. And, you know, they were like, you're going to do this. They're a little weirded out by it because they're very private people. But, you know, my mom, when she was still here, she always said, you're going to turn your pain into something big. And she's not here. And Mom, I love you, but it's not my pain. It's our pain. And I don't want it to be my daughter's pain. That's the thing, you know?
Right.
My mom wasn't listened to. My mom wasn't supported. My mom wasn't helped when she needed it throughout her entire life. And then that's the same thing that happened to me. And I could let it continue to happen to me. And then I could let it continue to happen with my daughter, but I'm not. It's stopping. It's running into me and it's stopping. All of it. The addiction,
that's right.
mental health, the sexual abuse. You know, I can't cure myself of mental health, but I can learn to prevent it. And that's something I just had to stop trying to fit into society standards. I've had to find places where I belong, because I do have mental health issues. And there is a lot of society that isn't comfortable talking about those things, that isn't accepting of neurodivergent people. And it's hard, you know, you want to be successful, you want to fit in society, but then society says no, because you have A, B, C, D. And I'm somebody who really wants to speak out against that and say, you know what, if you have trauma, maybe you have complex trauma, maybe you have one traumatic event, maybe you have ADHD, maybe you have autism, maybe you have schizophrenia, whatever the case is, it doesn't matter. You can still be successful. You still deserve a good life. You still deserve to rise above. But trying to take control and doing it our own way just does not help in that mission. So,
yeah. And then one thing, I think the most important, you know, part of rising above and as believers is that we cannot rise above alone. And as believers, we do not have to feel like we've been oppressed by the adversary. You know, we do not have to accept those demonic oppressions of PTSD or depression. But that's why we have the Holy Spirit to help us, to usher us. One thing I love about an eagle loves to soar above the storm.
yes.
And when you're closer to God and you feed yourself with the word, it flushes out those demonic oppressions, but it also gives us the eagle spirit. I mean, rising above the storm, no matter what. If you have the power of God, if you're obeying God and being in his word, it can help you and have that eagle mentality of rising above any storm through the Holy Spirit, by the Holy Spirit. And it takes constant practice. And also, I'm an advocate of reaching out to mental health specialists. They have those tools to help usher you out of those oppressions. But the main thing in order to get released from those oppressions is by the Holy Spirit. So like I said, I'm a big advocate of talking to someone, because God bless people to have those different tools to help people to get out of those mindsets.
Right.
But the Holy Spirit renews your mind.
Yes.
And I think it's really, really important for us to just seek help, stop your silence, seek help, but also know that the Lord is here to help us and to guide us out of those oppressions.
Yes.
Yeah. Ashley, I have one question for you. One more last question.
Yeah.
If there was someone out there, a woman out there that was dealing with something, dealing with everything that you just mentioned with part 1 and part 2, if there was a woman that was dealing with everything that you were dealing with, what would be your best advice to her to keep the faith? What would be, if she was on edge of dealing with all this stuff, what would be your advice to her right now at this moment? What would you tell her to keep the faith?
To keep the faith, to piggyback off what you said, you know, remember, we are at our best when we are an eagle. We are not meant to fit in. We are all meant to be eagles of our own right? And so when we're trying to fit in and find our worth through other people, through belonging in society or belonging in a relationship or a friendship or a job or even in your own family, that is where we tend to, not just as women, but as humans, but especially women, we get lost, because a lot of our identity is built up around as who we are as a daughter, or you know, are we a mother, or are we a professional, or if you're trying to do both. We get so lost, and we place so much of our worthiness and our value in the opinions and the perspectives of other people. So what I would say is stop that. Just realize.
I love it.
I know
just
it's
stop
easier
it.
said than done. And trust me, for me, it took a lot of shadow work, really writing these books and doing the things that make me uncomfortable, putting my face in a camera and having to look at myself, even my missing teeth, and doing those things and sharing my story, stopping the silence. That's all shadow.
Yes.
That's exactly what you talk about, those demonic beings and demons
Yes.
are shadows. So
Yeah.
when we spread light on those shadows, when we talk about the shadows instead of
Darkness.
putting them
Yes.
behind us, because when we put them behind us, that's where the shadow belongs, right? You're letting it live. Stop doing that. Put light on it
That's right.
and just tell
Cast them out.
everybody this is what's up,
Yes.
you know? And
Mm-hmm.
it's hard. It really is, because a lot of times we feel like when we speak up and we realize this is what makes me feel good, this is what makes me feel valued and worthy, we feel like we're hurting somebody else or we're not doing what somebody else wants. And that's where we get lost from childhood to adulthood. And you better believe I am constantly in my 12-year-old daughter's ear, because she's right now at that age where I first remember really falling apart, really worrying about what other people thought about how I looked, how I acted, how I spoke, what I was doing.
Yes.
I am her biggest cheerleader, and you do you. As long as you are acting from a place of love and you are acting age appropriate.
Yes.
And it starts at home. That's the other thing.
Yes.
It really does. But unfortunately, a lot of us didn't have a home that it started in, but you can become that home for yourself, for your kids, for whoever you come in connection with. But it has to start with you. It really does.
That's right. That's right. Ask God to restore you. Ashley, thank you so much for coming on Stopping the Silence for Rising Above Chaos for part 1 and part 2. Thank you for stopping your silence. And I know these 2 episodes was blessed the world. Thank you. Thank you, my sister. Thank you so much. May God bless you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you all for joining us with another episode of Stopping the Silence. Come again next Sunday with another beautiful episode. And remember to follow us on all the social media platforms and follow us on Instagram and also connect with us on our website. May God bless you. And remember that you are not alone. Help me to help you to stop your silence. Thank you. Stopping the Silence.